Welcome back, denizens of the Omniverse. Today we have a special video for you guys, especially if you're a fan of the Hellaverse. I got to sit down and have a little one-on-one with one of the lead writers and the head of production, Adam NEYLAN. You know, we met back at Level Up earlier this year, and he was a fan of the channel, and we got to kind of talking, and a little something that kind of came out of that was that we thought it'd be kind of cool, because obviously I would love to pick his brain, and let alone anybody behind the scenes of one of our favorite shows here on the channel. And one of the things we kind of came up with is, well, if this, does well or whatever, maybe it becomes a series, who knows? The idea was to shine a spotlight on some of the people behind the scenes that kind of helped create the show. And since it was he and I that started this conversation, I figured we'd start it off with him, and we had a pretty lengthy discussion, and I think we got some fun little nuggets. Also, like with my roundtable press interview with Viv, Brandon, Richard, Erica, and Amir, which was a first for me. That was a first little press thing. I got to sit down and do a little junket with everybody, though that was with me and other press from other outlets, and we kind of went around, we asked our question. You haven't seen my video for that. It's on the channel as well. Much like with that was my first time doing something like that. This is also my first time doing a one-on-one, so be kind, be gentle. It is a learning experience for sure. With that said, hope you enjoy. If you do, leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe if not already, engage with this video, and maybe we'll be able to do more of these. And make sure to stick around, because we got plenty of Hellaverse content coming for you guys as always, especially with Hazbin Hotel Season 2 coming out at the end of the month. But with that all said, let's get ready to get into the video. Hey guys, I am here with Adam NEYLAN from Spindlehorse, and he is here to kind of talk a little bit about the show, the behind the scenes, and just kind of digging a little bit behind the scenes, behind the curtain of the production of one of our favorite pieces of media here at the channel. How are you doing today, Adam?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm stoked to be here.
Hell yeah. Thank you for taking this time out of your day to just kind of chit chat with me here on the channel, and share your piece and get your story and insights. I really appreciate it. We talked a little bit of Level Up when we met. You were familiar with the channel already, which it's always surprising to me when I'm at a place to meet people and they're like, oh, hey, I kind of know your stuff.
I know your face. Yeah.
I think the first time I bumped into that was actually with Alex Brightman. He was a watcher of the channel at a point, and I don't know how to react to that sometimes. I was like, but I'm here for you. Why do you know me? But I think
we all go through that at some point. I mean, it's similar to me. It's I get it. I get it for Brandon's channel, because I'm an actor on Brandon Rogers' YouTube channel and stuff. And so whenever we're at the con and somebody shows up, I always expect it to be about Helluva Boss. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people go, "Oh, I know you from this thing you did in 2009, and I love it. I've been a fan since then." I'm like, "Oh, whoa!"
Yeah,
cool.
That's awesome, man. You've been working with Brandon for a long time, right?
Yeah. We met in college, and we've been working together since 2009 to now. What is that? 15 years, 16 years, something like that?
Yeah, give or take, man.
It's been a long haul, and we just we met in like a theater improv class. We really vibed, and he was already making videos at the time, and he just started incorporating me and a lot of our other classmates as well. Actually, some people that are still on the channel to this day, are from that improv group. So
that's wild.
It's a real legacy.
Yeah, one thing I found out, because I was listening to Katie Sackhoff's podcast this week, and I know she just recently interviewed him. I didn't realize how close in age all of us kind of were. Like, I'm only 2 years older than you. You were born in 90, correct? 1990. Yeah. And both me and Brandon, I thought Brandon was younger, to be honest, than he turned up being. Like, I was expecting to be like.
I would love to hear that.
I really thought he was like late 20s at most, and and he's only a few months younger than me. As a fellow 88er.
Yeah. But like, he's got a youthful energy to him for sure.
Definitely, I would not have guessed. So like, we kind of grew up in the same sphere, with YouTube coming on around the same kind of time, as well as I think a lot of the things that kind of inspired a lot of what we see with the show itself, because I know Viv herself is a huge fan of like stuff like South Park and Vader Zim, and this kind of carries a lot of that energy. Is that kind of something you were into before you made it into the show as well, or what were you interested in growing up particularly?
Yeah, well, I had a really wide array of interests. I mean, I still do. You know, I'm really into kind of any nerd topic you can really kind of pick out. I'm into it. But no, where me and Viv align is definitely like in South Park. I grew up watching South Park. It was like the most, you know, out there, and it was kind of taboo, which made it that much cooler to us as kids. And we I loved it. And Invader Zim is another one that's huge, hugely influential on me. The original like seasons of SpongeBob came out when I was in the exact right age for it. But beyond that, you know, I'm a huge anime fan. Well, I can't say huge anywhere. I haven't been keeping up with it. But back when I was a kid and stuff, I was watching, you know, Full Metal Alchemist and Dragon Ball and Yu Yu Hakusho and Gundam. Gundam was huge for me.
Hell yeah.
Specifically Gundam Wing on like the original Toonami lineup and stuff. That was great. Cowboy Bebop is like my favorite of all time. It's so cool and stylistic and I mean, just cool, right? Like,
I mean, that was like
possibly the coolest anime out there.
Yeah, it's got that vibe, and you feel cool watching it too.
Yeah,
it's so good.
Like it's one of those. There's some Friends joke that like you know, Chandler makes about like, oh, you know, it's bottom line is smoking's cool and we all know it. And it's like, you know what, Cowboy Bebop really drove that home. Like anytime I see somebody leaning it up against the wall with a cigarette, I'm like, all right, Spike. All right.
I see you. I see you. Yeah. So we got a lot of similarities there then, because that Toonami block, I think, indoctrinated a lot of people into that sphere for sure.
Sorry, that was the other one I forgot.
Dude.
That was huge for me.
God, and just it's wild because like when I was at SDCC, they had a lot of what was going on was promoting like the 30th anniversary for Gundam Wing, which was insane. And they had some of the people there, and that was such a fun panel. Not to get off on a little side tangent, but I love that shit, man.
I love Gundam Wing is just the tits. I love it.
God, I would love if they ever revisited that. I never fell in love with a Gundam series like I did with that. And I don't know if it's just because it was my first or anything, but it's
probably, I think that's, you know, you know, as much as I love Wing, I'll admit it's probably because there's some really good Gundam shows out there. But nothing hits, you're right, nothing hits quite like Wing. So,
but after all of that, you know, with working with Brandon and whatnot, how did you find yourself meeting Viv or getting involved with the show? Because I noticed that while not having like any writing credits or anything like that, and even in season 1, you were credited in the special thanks and stuff like that. So did you meet through Brandon? Did you meet her on your own? How did that come to be?
Yeah, so we met through Brandon. Brandon showed me the pilot when he probably wasn't supposed to, when it was halfway done. And we were sitting in his kitchen, and we were working on a series called Blame the Hero at the time. Which is on Brandon's channel. It's a great project that we love. And but you know, while we were doing it, he's like, this is a really big time for me. This is kind of this epic show that we're working on, but I'm also doing this cartoon thing, and I actually want your opinion on it. Like, is this any good? I'm not like an animation person, so I don't know if this is like any good. And so I watched it, and my jaw hit the floor, man. I was like, dude, this is something special. Like, you are involved with something really, really cool. And there was an it factor about it that just told me it was going to be huge. And I was supremely jealous, and I really wanted to be a part of it and stuff. And it was everything I ever could have wanted to be a part of. And you know, but that you can't like just go asking for those things. So I was like, all right, you know, just I'm happy just to be on the inside, kind of watching it come to fruition. And then we did a stand-up show at Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank, and Brandon had me open for him, and Viv came, and she was there, and after the show, we all went to this bar afterwards, and Brandon had a lot of people that he knew that had come to the show to support him. So he kind of was on host duty. He was mingling and running around and kind of making sure everyone was okay and saying, making sure to say hi and take pictures and stuff. And Viv didn't really know anyone, and I was there, and we got introduced, and me and her just ended up talking all night about animation and our influences and the kind of stuff we liked, and eventually Helluva Boss. And she had asked some questions about like what I thought about this, that, and the other, and I gave her some answers. She was like, actually I think that sounds really cool. I'd love it if you could take a look at some animatics that we have for some upcoming episodes in season 1. And I was like, oh hell yeah, like that sounds amazing. And so we went back, and the next day she sent me Lululand was the first one that she sent me. And I remember watching Lululand, and I was like, I thought this was good before, but god damn, like this is incredible. And I gave her some thoughts. Lululand is such a great episode. There wasn't too much note wise or anything for me to or any kind of feedback for me to give, but there were like a couple tiny things, and she appreciated them, and she took them into account, and she was like, I appreciate that feedback. Can I send you some scripts to look at, and give me your thoughts on? I was like, sure. And so she sends me basically the rest of season 1 in script form, and I was like, this is, awesome. Gave some thoughts here and there, and she was like, wow, these notes are really good. How about I actually have some season 2 stuff we're working on too. You take a look. And I was like, sure. And those are much more like draft 1 phase,
right.
And so I was able to like really get in there and give some more kind of feedback that could be constructive. The rest of it was really just me going like, yeah, no, this is incredible. But the season 2 stuff, I got a chance to really, get into the nitty gritty. And she came back and she was like, I just love the way that you think about our world and our characters. And I know you're a writer for Brandon. If it wouldn't be too much of a conflict of interest or anything, like, would you consider writing a script? And I was like, oh my God, yes. Are you kidding me? Like, all the alarm bells going off, like, oh my God. And then I got assigned Seeing Stars. That was my my first assignment on the show. So yeah, all those special thanks are really just for me looking at a script and going, yeah, that's good job. Also, hey, maybe this one thing, like maybe you should have RoboFizz spark a little bit just to really communicate the robo-ness of him, since like this is the first time we're meeting the character, and you have him, and then you have like a real Fizz off somewhere off camera, so like let's really make it clear he's a robot, just to really sell that. And she was like, oh yeah. But it was already there, it was all so good. So yeah, and then in season 2 I wrote a script, and she liked it, so she asked me to write another, and then work with Brandon on one, and then work with her on one, and kind of at some point it just became, we didn't even really formalize the working relationship for a good long time. It was just kind of us vibing and working together, and it was great because this is how me and Brandon have been doing things forever. It's just this very organic, free flowing kind of creative collaboration. And then at some point I was like, hey, I had to have the talk, like, what do we call ourselves? Are we like, it was like the are you my girlfriend talk? It was,
so what are we? Like, where are we going?
Like, what is this? Am I writing on the show? And she's like, oh yeah, no, I'd love to have you as like the whole series writer and stuff. And actually I was thinking about bringing you over on Hazbin too, because we were getting ready to work on Hazbin season 1 at the time. And I was like, and I basically fainted right there. I was just like, this is everything. It was just everything I could have ever asked for, and kind of the rest is history.
That's awesome, man. It just seems like the right dominoes fell into the place to like land you right there. And was writing always something you were drawn to growing up? Like, is that what you set out to do, or was it comedy or something completely different initially?
I did not think of myself as a writer for a long, long time. I will say that my parents seemed to identify it before I did. You know,
Really?
they always thought, yeah, back in school when I would do homework and book reports and stuff like that, they were always very impressed with like I don't know, just the way I expressed my thoughts. It wasn't, and now I get it because like I've seen, kids stuff and
Yeah.
it's all very stiff and wooden and it's apparently mine didn't have some of that woodenness to it. And but for the longest time I just wanted to be an actor. I went to school for theater. I was in like all the plays through grade school and then high school. I did like we had this kind of specialized diploma program. It was
Hmm.
I basically I lettered. I like varsity lettered in theater, which is I didn't even know you could do until like my senior year. And then in college, yeah, I was a theater major for 2 years, and then I changed to speech because I joined like the speech and debate, like
Hmm.
forensics is what it's called, but it's like the speech and debate, um, not club team, I guess.
Right.
And me and Brandon both actually, we both did that, and yeah, it was there actually in speech and debate that I really discovered that I loved writing. And it was because I was working with Brandon on theater class at the time, and he had, you know, identified some of that ability in me.
Hmm.
Or he's like, you're really thinking about the show on a macro level. You're not just thinking about your character. You're not just thinking about your lines. You're thinking about kind of holistically what's going to make an episode stronger, make it more narratively sound and stuff. I could really use that. And so we started working on that together. And then also during speech and debate, I was doing interpretation of literature. And, it's not really, you're supposed to kind of pick literature that's out there, but
Hmm.
sometimes, especially in programs where you're picking from multiple pieces, you can kind of fudge it and write your own. If you need some connective sinew that you can't find in a pre-published book, you can
Right.
get away with writing it as long as it doesn't stand out too much. And so I was doing some of that, and it worked. And something I wrote got me. I didn't break into finals, but I got like 1 point shy of breaking into finals at the
Hmm.
national tournament, which was really validating because I was like, wow, there's hundreds and hundreds of people competing, and I was in the top, I guess, probably 20, something like that. That
That's
was
huge.
really it was a huge moment for me to feel like, wow, something I wrote actually got people to give me the time of day.
Right.
Um, and then obviously like the Brandon stuff was also encouraging, but there was always that veneer of like, yeah, but it's Brandon, like you know what I mean? And no, not that that's bad, but it's like it's Brandon's always going to put his flavor on something. It's not
Right.
necessarily mine, unambiguously mine.
Right.
It's my contribution to a bigger Brandon project. Um, and then Seeing Stars was like my first actual full screenplay that I had
Hmm.
ever done. Like prior to that, I've been writing with Brandon comedy and YouTube stuff for 10 years, but I'd never written an entire screenplay start to finish. I wrote scenes, I wrote dialogue, I wrote story with him,
Hmm.
but I'd never entirely done one thing. So um, it's interesting too, because like most people get to write their first of anything in relative obscurity. And
Right.
I unfortunately had the experience of having my very first of something judged, by millions of people.
Right out the gate.
Yeah, which
Just
was an
thrown to the
intense
wolves.
experience. It was equal parts rewarding and I won't say devastating, but shocking certainly to the system to get such a diverse and varied spectrum of opinions on your
Hmm.
work so quickly, and so many of them, so numerous.
Right.
There were people that I saw that cried at some of the more emotional scenes, and I was like, this is so fulfilling, and this is hitting me in a way that I never expected. And there's people that are just like, he's the worst thing ever and should die for writing this. And I was like, oh,
Welcome to the internet.
okay. Holy shit, man.
People get very passionate, I'll say,
Yeah,
about certain
yeah, yeah.
things. Coming in though, like, what was it like? You said that was your first full screenplay that you had done. What was
Mhm.
different? Was there anything different about transitioning to from just kind of like you said before, specific jokes or scenes or
Mhm.
character writing to just from start to finish mapping an entire piece?
Um, I mean, mostly technical stuff, creatively, I had done a full screenplay's worth of writing multiple times over. You know what I mean? It was just that I hadn't actually executed one from start to finish. And so it was easier than I thought in
Mm-hmm.
that, I already knew how to do it all. It was just a matter of like actually doing all the steps, sequentially and together. Um, I'd say probably the thing that was the most difficult and maybe still trips me up sometimes is like the connective tissue,
Mm-hmm.
like the sinew that gets you from scene to scene. Um, there was definitely a like in YouTube, everything's very quick cut. You know what I mean? YouTube comedy is very staccato in
Right.
its pacing, and that was something that took some learning in Seeing Stars, was like getting that connective tissue of like smoothly and organically moving from scene to scene without making somebody feel like they're snapping their neck going like, wait, where do I look,
Mm-hmm. Right.
because it's so not they're just two very different disciplines of like of writing, scene to scene comedy, and this
Mm-hmm.
is a much long Helluva is a much longer form, much more kind of holistic uh, kind of piece of content, a more traditional piece of content,
Right.
versus your 5 minute YouTube video, right? Where it's like, how do we get here? Who cares? Like we're here now, and that's what's important.
It's very like because a lot of YouTube, especially around that time, and even still right now, and especially with TikTok and everything right now, like the collective perception of time and attention span seems to be kind of crunching in on itself. So
Mhm.
there's an impulse to keep the energy going,
Yeah.
and so like from the way you're describing it, like transitioning from what you're used to writing with like Brandon to like something where you don't really necessarily have to hold everybody's attention every couple of seconds or whatever was a little bit of
Yeah.
a learning point, it seemed like.
Yeah. But it also happens the other way around too, where
Mhm.
you can get lost in the sauce in the in the drama of a scene. And it's funny because Brandon's usually the first one that'll come back and go like, why hasn't something happened? In like 5 pages. We
Mhm.
need something to happen. We need like I love that these guys are sitting around and talking their feelings out, but like something needs to happen. This conversation doesn't necessarily need to happen in one full go. We can break this up. We can have these conversations in parts. We can give the audience more to look at, because at the end of the day, there is still like an art to just keeping people engaged
Right.
and not sinking into that long drawn out melodrama, if you
Right.
will,
Striking that
and
balance.
so that's the thing. I think it's what makes us a good writers room, is there is a tug of war that's happening. Viv loves her romance, and Viv loves her schmarmy moments and stuff, as we all do. And Brandon loves his quick cut comedy. And when the two of them meet, and are working at opposing ends of something,
Mhm.
I think it often lands us in the sweet spot of like exactly where we need to be, where stuff is engaging and there's momentum and there is a sense of energy and forward motion without being too frenetic.
Mhm.
And then we also get the slower, more intimate beats of the emotional, the conversation, the relationship building, and I think it's kind of what makes the show like find like I think it's what gives the show its voice.
100%. Now, like the way you like talked about the push and pull within the writers' room for that, I feel like, and maybe this would be great insight coming from you, um, from the outsider's perspective, from the people that just sit back and watch the show and whatnot. Um, can you kind of break down in maybe like the simplest or layman's terms, like what you know who the lead writer is, like when your
Mm.
name is the one that comes up front and center, and then you have like staff writer or story by what, like how does that all feed into the final product?
Sure,
Because it's very
yeah.
much so, I think, like it is like you said, it's a collaborative effort and whatnot. So what does that
Yeah.
look like from start to finish for you all?
Well, yeah, to make something clear up front, there is no episode that like nobody else touches,
Hmm.
right? Everybody is touching everything. And everybody is having an effect and their voice is heard on everything, or rewriting things or adding lines, adding jokes, whatever. But what it really looks like is there's the story writing process, which is where we kind of break the season. We do decide what the story is for the season, the central narrative, all the various character arcs. And that's typically me, Viv, and now Sky Henwood,
Hmm.
who was also our animation director. She's the animation director over on Hazbin as well. Um, and that's kind of the broad strokes. And then we get into the assigning phase where we assign the episodes out to who's going to be the writer, like the written by credit, right? And that's ultimately the person who's drafting it and who's just taking point on manifesting the episode in its like proper dialogue full kind of form,
Right.
right? Once that's done, it gets kicked back to the writers' room, which is all of us. It's me, Viv, Sky. We now have Lyle, Wrath, as well, and Brandon in the room, and we sit around and we punch things up, and we give our notes. We can alter the flow of change the story if need be. Um, Most of the story stays the same, like the broad strokes stay the same, but like
Hmm.
there's we've altered character arcs kind of in the writers room and stuff. I know we gave Luna a bit more kind of in the writers room than she had in the story process for season 3, which was awesome. And it kind of came about organically as we were seeing these scripts come together. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of room for that kind of organic shifting where where you're kind of letting the story write itself to a certain you know
Right.
uh, kind of amount. Like as something comes to life, it often reveals new pathways that you can take, right? And so we try to pursue those where we can, because I think it always develops into something that's more organic and more interesting and natural than maybe what we were doing top down, right?
Right.
And then, we kind of do that back and forth, the ping pong back and forth of give notes, send it back to the writer who applies the notes, applies the drafts. And then at the very last stage, we do what we call like the tightening draft, or the fine tune
Hmm.
draft, where we all sit at the table and we literally just go line by line by line. And every single line is greenlit by everybody, where it's like, um, you know, we read through a page. Did anybody have anything in there they want to tweak? This word here, this word there,
Right.
whatever, and that's you'd be surprised. There's a lot of times where single words can really shift the intention or the intensity or the emotional direction of a scene.
Hmm.
And that's where we do some of our best work, is weirdly in the minutia of just tweaking this little thing here, picking this adjective versus this adjective
Right.
to describe something, because it's either funnier or it's more impactful, or it's oh, this isn't, this person's not mad enough for what just happened, let's like ramp up the intensity of what they're saying. Things like that. And that's, when you're just doing that writers room stuff, that's the staff writer kind of credit. And then yeah, the story writer we explained, and then yeah, written by is just whoever kind of did the primary draft. So that's basically how it works out. And then we send it off to be boarded.
Oh yeah. I appreciate the
Yeah.
breakdown. Um,
But I'll say this too, there's a lot of actual additional like improv and writing that'll happen in the booth as well. you know
right.
um Brandon is so good at being Blitz that like so half of his sessions aren't the script as written. It's just him riffing
Hmm.
and like in the moment making the lines even more Blitz-ish than they
Right.
were before.
Yeah, I know. I
And
know.
it's awesome.
Yeah, I know he's recently talked about how I can't remember if it was a convention or something like that. I can't remember where I heard him say this, was like where he feels very protective over the character as
Yeah.
he's become so entangled with it, because so much
Yeah.
of him has some overlap with him. Um, and I know he's like, he was like, I don't think he would say this or blah, blah, and or kind of go in like, how often does that happen? Do you have a lot of that? Because I think he was also like, it doesn't happen that often, but
Right. Well, I think that especially in early drafts, something
mhm,
that'll often happen for all characters is you write something that gets the job done of what you needed to get done in the scene, but you haven't quite written it in the voice of the character yet.
right.
It sounds like a line that any character could say. And so that those will often get changed by, I mean, everyone, not just Brandon, but we'll go through and be like, does that really sound like Moxie? This line,
Mhm.
it gets the job done perfectly for what we need, but like, does it actually sound like him? And then we'll go back and we'll tweak that. And then as far as Brandon being protective, I would say that there occasionally, like I said, he's very close to the character. So it's just one of those occasional things to look at something and be like, I really feel like I might react differently, or like Blitz might react differently, or whatever. Like I really feel strongly about
Mhm.
this kind of emotional direction. And sometimes we'll have to stop and we'll look at the and go, all right, let's pursue that train of thought for a second and go, where does that take us? And sometimes it doesn't work out in his favor, and plenty of times it does, where
Mhm.
it's like, that actually led us somewhere really interesting. And yeah, cool. Good call, Brandon. Um, it's a very interesting process. Like when you have somebody as in tune with their character as Brandon is, he can offer a lot of opportunities to pursue things that you wouldn't normally think of.
Right. Has there ever been a time where, whether it be you and Brandon, you and Viv, or anything, where there was ever like an actual like complete disagreement on any particular thing? It could be anything.
Yeah, yeah. There was I'll just say that there was an episode early in season 3 where I fully just disagreed with Viv on a direction, and I was like, I really think that, like, I can't say much, but like I really think that this kind of emotional thing would be more believable than this emotional thing, and it was just it was a differing perspective kind of thing of both just personally, but also like life experience.
Right.
And she was like, I promise you this is so much more relatable than you think it is. Like, just give it a chance. Like, you got to trust me on this. And man, by the time it got recorded and then sent to animatic, I like had to sit back and go, she was right, man. I was dead wrong. This really really works. And that's it was an interesting learning experience where, like, you don't me and Brandon are so similar in so many ways. We can always kind of like live in each other's mind a little
Yeah.
bit. My wife often like teases us because we can literally just, something will happen and it will remind both of us of the same thing at the same time. We'll like turn to each other, but it's not like a meme. It's just some kind of, you know, like, it's a personal kind of meme between us. And
Right.
we'll look at each other and we'll say like half a word to each other and we'll both start laughing. And she's like, "You guys are speaking your own language." Um, and sometimes I take that for granted with everyone. Like, I
Right.
assume that that's where I am, and it really was a valuable lesson. And like, no, sometimes just people just have a vision that you aren't seeing, and you need to like have enough grace to like trust in that.
Mhm.
And that's the thing. Viv is, she's got such a strong vision and such a strong like understanding of her world, that you got to just trust her, because like when you do, great things happen.
Right.
you know and yeah, that was, yeah. But I'd say for the most part, we don't that was like the reason it's so easy to hone in on that moment is because they're so few and far between.
Right.
Like, I mean, that's maybe the one I could really think of where we had like a really strong disagreement. I think most of the time it's like eh, what we say a lot is like, I mean, I'm not going to die on this hill. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
Like, oh, I think it might be stronger. Like, I don't care that much to fight for this though. Like, I think it might be. We're talking. I think this way is 5% stronger than this way. But like,
Right.
if you feel strongly about that, I'm not going to fucking fight over it. Like, I not gonna die on that hill.
Right. Like you were talking about the creation process or the mapping of the story, like when you start to, before you get to like breaking down each individual episode, kind of the broad strokes of what this season is going to look like, or what the general outline or objective of each episode is going to be. When you're
Yeah.
starting out with that outline, was there any contribution that came fully from you, whether it be a storyline, character arc, or scenario, that you added into the mix that made it in, or just one in general that you maybe relate to the most?
Yeah. I got two answers for you. One's a short. The Emberlyn short, or Weeaboo, that was one that I had pitched
Mm-hmm.
the concept for, and it was accepted. And then I kind of got to take a crack at it without any real contributing, thoughts
Mm-hmm.
from anyone else. And obviously they came in later and they tweaked the stuff, but that was like a really exciting thing because most of the main episodes, all the concepts come from Viv
Mm-hmm.
primarily. We build off of them and stuff, and we so I had mentioned before the story writing, it's like we're doing all the broad strokes, but like the kind of the actual individual points, those have all typically been mapped out by Viv
Gotcha.
prior to us getting there. So a lot of stuff, even if I'm the one that introduced it, like I got to introduce Chaz and Krim and a few other people. Those aren't concepts that came originally from me, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Chaz's concept came from Viv, and Krim very obviously came from Viv and stuff. So Emberlyn being like my one true brain baby, and her being kind of embraced by the fan base was
Mm-hmm.
really rewarding and validating. I got to sit at a con at Level Up where we met with Monica next to me, who
Yeah.
plays Emberlyn, and that was like so cool to see all the people come up to her and like who were so excited to meet her. So many people dressed as Emberlyn. That was really really cool and and such a special experience. But the second thing is, there's individual scenes, and I'll say in Seeing Stars, the observatory scene was something that came from a very like real place, and it remained mostly untouched from draft one, which was
Mm-hmm.
really validating as well, especially on my first script,
Right.
right? That I had this scene that was important to me, and that came from a real place that ultimately was accepted and not heavily altered or edited or tweaked with. That was really cool, and it's still probably one of, if not the most special scene in the series to me for that reason.
Mm. It's a fantastic scene. It twisted that knife right in the heart, man. Just right there after such a chaotic episode as well, but like that emotional through line of that, and then the way that kind of capstones at the end was
Mhm.
really really well done. It's one of those things that I feel like stuck with myself and a lot of people, especially at that point, because like yeah, nobody's perfect, everybody's trying their best to figure out their life, and you gotta sometimes realize that parents are people, but
Mhm.
it's beautiful, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Thanks.
No, that's one of those, probably one of my favorite moments in season 2, I think, is that just that little sit down between two daughters, you know.
Yeah. And
um
it meant a lot that so many people it resonated. So I mean, obviously, I've never been a teenage girl, so to see that it did resonate with plenty of women out there
mhm.
was also very validating to know like I'd done it right. I hadn't like, I don't know, gone outside of my comfort zone and gotten punished for it, kind of a
Right.
thing. That it was a risk and it paid off.
No,
It was great.
like I connected with that a lot too personally, as just like as a child of divorce and all that. So like a lot of that storyline, and even like the contention, I think, with Octavia, I definitely relate to, with the very teenager like mindset you're in when you don't know what's happening around you, and you don't know who really feels what about a situation. But at the end of the day, one or the other, no matter what you think, is at least trying to make it through the world in the same way that you are, and they might stumble, trip, fall, whatever. It's something you don't really. I don't think it's anything you really learn until you're an adult. I think once you've kind of gotten to those shoes yourself at a certain point, that you kind of look back and maybe you'll understand. You don't necessarily forgive some things, but like you can at least understand that maybe they were trying their best, or maybe life just kind of happened in a certain way and it didn't work out. And we get to see, I presume, at some point where that eventually goes with her, because obviously we're still in the kind of like the early stages of all of that conflict. So, yeah, I thought that really, really worked real nicely. And I know we were talking about earlier about intention, like tweaking words, going through the process of like kind of like, do we need to change out this adjective, this word? And a lot of words, specifically in our character dynamics, especially from very different worlds, can have wildly different meanings for one or the other. And I know you worked on Full Moon.
Yeah.
And there's that beautiful dance. Well, I say beautiful. It's beautifully executed, I think, but it is gut-wrenching to watch.
Yeah.
But is that dance of words between Blitz and Stolas as they are kind of finally initiating that talk. And they both obviously have very different worldviews and coming from two very different places. Those feelings are real, but their way of navigating the world is so different that it creates a lot of conflict. How was it navigating that balance to make sure that it didn't fall too far one way for either character during that? Because I felt like it was handled really, really gracefully.
Thank you, first of all. But yeah, that was a lot of hard work. Me and Viv went through that script probably more times, specifically that scene, more times than any other script we've ever worked on together. I'd say we did 10 to 15 drafts on it at least. Just tweaking here, tweaking there, constantly looking at like, all right, like how does this make Blitz look versus how does this make Stolas look? Is Blitz going too hard here? Is Stolas going too hard here? Are we playing too much on the Stolas emotion beat here? And I think that there was the intention with that scene was definitely to leave the audience not knowing how to feel, And I think that one of the kind of key elements of the show in general is the difference in perspective and bias that like people kind of carry around in their day-to-day lives, and how that affects their relationships and how that affects how they interact with one another. And Blitz and Stolas are like the kind of central pillar of that issue. And this was kind of our big chance to show exactly what that looks like in play, where two people can be talking and using the same words but having entirely different conversations that they'll never come to an understanding on, because the words they use mean different things to either of them, or to each of them. So that was a challenge, and I do think we pulled it off, if for no other reason than there's a massive spectrum of opinions online about like who's in the right, who's in the wrong, who deserves better, or who deserves some hate. And it's like I think that shows that like people, the audience members are bringing their own experiences and biases into the viewing experience, and are letting that color how they feel about the characters and their actions as well. And I think that that's on full display here, and and that's like the best thing we could ask for, is for that, like the disagreement, the disharmony in the fan base is weirdly like kind of the point, it's the mark of success, for what we were attempting here with that episode, and just with this central conflict in general.
I mean, it's indicative of what's going on with the characters themselves and the way they end off in that episode as well. Because like you said, like they're having the same conversation, using sometimes the same words, but because he grew up the way he did, their context for what a lot of that means can be like almost 180 in difference from what they actually are talking about. And you know, with the way we might latch on to a favorite character or who we relate to the most, we might feel like one might be a little more right or wrong than the other, when the truth of the matter at the bottom, when you get down to it, it's no, they're both, I think, equally right and wrong in certain ways. And that's just life. It's not clean. It's not.
I was about to say that,
it's complicated.
That's life, right?
It's complex. And I love.
We don't like in life. You don't really have heroes and villains or protagonists and antagonists. It's just people making decisions based on their lives and the context of their experience, and it has effects. And good people can hurt the people they care about, and you know, bad people can do good things, and you know, what even is it to be a good versus bad person, or right versus wrong in these scenarios. And I think that you know, just as a quick beat, the writing is only one step of like selling that too. The two other kind of main things are the voice, the line deliveries and the voice acting involved, and the visual acting choices that are made by the board artists and the animators. And like, we wouldn't be anywhere without this. So I want to take a quick second to shout out our board director, R2, Tony. He's like so incredible at like eking out these amazingly intimate beats of emotion, and selling these ideas, and they're really good at like getting in sync with Viv and I and the rest of the writing team in terms of like exactly what we're looking for, and selling that and making sure that all of it reads. There's so many scenes where like the visuals like in not only enhance the script, but like add to it in certain, like, you know, in the script there's like one or two beats of a certain emotion, and in the boards they'll play with like whole different levels of emotions playing off a character's face to kind of sell the conflict of a scene that wasn't necessarily in the script but is in line with exactly what we were like going for.
Right.
And having those instincts and that insight is hugely important, and it's invaluable, and I think it's definitely a huge part of what makes the show as successful as it is in telling those very complicated emotional stories. And then obviously our voice cast is just incredible. Brandon, for being such a comedian, is so incredible in these small intimate moments, and like in giving these nuanced, subtle performances. You know, among others, Bryce as Stolas is incredible, and his is difficult too, because he's speaking at a higher kind of like tone of voice than his natural speaking voice.
Right. Yeah.
So when you do that, when you strain either high or low, it tends to remove a lot of like levels from your ability to like perform. So the fact that he can get so much like nuance out of his voice when he's already in such a like a high register outside of his comfort zone is nothing short of astonishing and like really incredible. So yeah, that it's, you know, the scripts are great, but they're, especially in animation, they're nothing without the rest of the team, and their incredible talent as well.
Exactly, because if the animation doesn't line up, because a lot of communication, like going back to, you know, words and intent and all of that, a lot of our communication, and another thing that can definitely change the meaning of what's on the page, is the delivery, our body language. Sometimes the way we speak a word or whatever can be drastically changed by the way we deliver it, whether it's the tone of our voice, or simple look of the eye, or tweak of the body, a little like tension in the way it's delivered. Oh, did he lie? Did he mean that? Like, what was actually here? Was that sarcasm? Like, it can, so much of that is like, it's again like the whole little thing between Stolas and him. It's a dance. You got to trust all the different partners that you're there with, that the whole show kind of comes through. And I think the team does a really good job at, I think, of really kind of getting that through, because the emotional beats, all the beats really, but like, I think in a show that's, you know, there's a lot of comedy at its core, and it can be in very situationally absurd, like the emotional beats always really just come in like a wrecking ball. And I think you all really do that quite well, and it's nice to hear that like so much of the team seems pretty on sync with a lot of that. Seems like you guys,
Yeah.
uh, for the most part, I don't know if this is like a cultivation like of who you decide to bring in or whatever. I'm sure a large part of it is that a lot of there's not a lot of friction. It seems like when some of these things are coming together.
No, certainly not at the leadership level.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's where the vision really needs to synchronize. You know, as the farther down you get, the more compartmentalized it gets. But like, you know, Tony, our board director, really needs to work well with Mel, our animation director, because like Mel is going to be the one actually executing on these boards and like
Mm-hmm.
taking those acting moments and properly bringing them to life in motion, right?
Right.
And that's also like a you know, I mean, not to say that animators aren't, you know, praised, but like it's a kind of an unsung part. I think people put a lot of attention on boards, but the art of like taking those moments and properly like putting them in motion, and it's so, you know, I think people don't realize sometimes how easy it is to like really scuff animation, where it's like, you know, things are, you know, very close to what would look really good, but like there's just something slightly off that like makes it more wooden or you know, less expressive or less
Mm-hmm.
dynamic. And you know, it's I make fun of Mel all the time for being so finicky, but really when you see, you know, oh hey, this one line is out of place, but when you see the difference between, you know, the stuff that hasn't received those tweaks versus what has, it's that little bit of change can just have huge returns in terms of like how well they impact
Right.
a scene and hit the audience. So it's a whole thing. Like it's really it's really special, and being involved in the production side of things, because I'm also the head of production now at the studio. That has opened my eyes to like a whole new side of animation that I never appreciated before I got to the industry, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I want to get circle back around to that here in a little
Sure.
bit. One little, I think it's just kind of the last couple things I want to touch on is the writing aspect before we
Please.
move on, because I do want to talk about that as well. Because I definitely feel like that's something I feel like most people probably. I mean, there's an idea of what the animators do, what the writers do, the actors do.
Hmm.
I feel like that's definitely in that kind of shadowy back corner where I'd love to kind of shine a little light if we can get to it. But before we move on to
Absolutely.
that, first off, just something simple. I was like, you've written a lot of episodes that have involved a lot of different characters in varying capacities. Is there any character you like to write for the most? You're like, oh yes, I can't wait to crack in or do something fun with them or something like that, or maybe someone you don't
Man,
touch enough that you would love to.
I love Moxie. Moxie is probably my favorite character.
Same, same.
And you know, Viv, that was one of the bigger compliments she paid me when I first started. She's like, I really like how you write Moxie, and I was like, good, because I love writing him. Um, but let's beyond that. You know, I've said that answer before. I'm trying to think of somebody else who I'd love to. I mean, there's some characters out there I haven't really written for as like a, you know, as the
Mm-hmm.
primary writer for, like Mammon. I love Mammon, and so does everybody else. So everybody wants to get a Mammon episode to write for. But yeah, no, I'd love it, and I'd love to write more Mammon stuff. He's just so funny, and he's such a like thinking of the most outrageous shit you could say, and like that's what Mammon will do. Any character like that, Adam in Hazbin
Yeah.
was the same way. I loved writing for his dialogue. It was so good.
Speaking of that, because I know we spent a lot of time talking about Helluva Boss. What was there? Was there any, if at all, difference in your all's approach between, because you largely work in the Helluva Boss world, but you wrote
Mhm.
2 episodes of Hazbin Hotel. Was there anything procedurally different about the approach to writing for Hazbin versus Helluva Boss, or just anything in general that you'd like to call out about that? Because I'd love to know.
Yeah, well, you know, procedurally all writers rooms are a little different,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but we have the benefit of having a showrunner that has such a strong vision and a strong presence in the room and a strong understanding of her characters and where she wants things to go, that the room is the easy part, and like that is very similar, in that regard. Like Amazon's been a great partner to work with, but between the two shows, there's not a ton of differences. It's and that's a really fortunate thing that it's very comfortable, it's very organic, and there's really not, a whole lot of variation between them.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, consistency really helps when, especially if you're bouncing between these worlds, and as these worlds start to. And then the last writing thing I kind of want to touch on before we kind of go behind the scenes or behind the curtains is we talked about this kind of kicked off with you and Brandon sneakily getting a peek at the pilot. What was it like taking lead on this new pilot for somebody who saw the original? And like, what was the goal with that? And what was the main thing you wanted to make sure everybody left that episode with in mind? Like, and how did you navigate? What are we changing? What are we keeping? What are we highlighting? Because you got to see it before anybody else did. And then here you are years later being like, let's do this again.
Yeah, that was an absolute dream come true. I loved being able to work on they'll say, like, not only was a dream come true to be able to like help restart everything, but there's certain dynamics that had already kind of moved on by the time season 2 came around. So I never got to write for those early on dynamics.
Right.
And so that was really fun to kind of jump into that and explore that a little bit more. The more contentious, even more friction-filled stuff with Moxie and Blitz, to show some of those early days between Blitz and Stolas and all that stuff. It was really cool to go back and revisit. I will say it was incredibly challenging as a concept because we knew we wanted to do it short. We wanted to do it roughly the same length as the pilot was. And we didn't want to just retread. There are certain things that weren't canon in the original that we needed to change out, and so that left certain holes that needed to be filled. But we also needed to communicate all the same information that the original pilot communicated for new audiences, but like add more and give returning audiences something to grab hold of, and enjoy. Like, my biggest fear was that people were gonna sit down and watch it, just go, yeah, I've seen it,
Right.
Like, I get it. We've been there, done that, for years now, right? Like, people have been in this world for years and years and years. So yeah, the goal and what we were trying to accomplish was really just, how do we keep this fresh? How do we do what we need to do while still providing something new and exciting? And I think the framework of like planning an assassination and getting to highlight the characters through how they would, pursue this thing, and having Stolas interact more directly with Blitz than just a phone call, stuff like that was where we decided that would live, and that was a fun thing to like explore. Me and Viv and Brandon, all like kind of, it was a hard one. We had to go in and really tweak here and there to make it fit well and make sure that it was still in the spirit. Because that's the other thing too, is I wanted to still make sure that it still had a very similar tone and like the spirit of the pilot that Brandon and Viv created together. I don't think it does anybody any favors to like make it unrecognizable from what they kind of spawned together originally, but it still just needed to be changed and put more in line with what the show kind of became naturally over time. So yeah, it was a project, and it was a challenge, and it was all these things, but it was so rewarding, and I gotta say, I love to see how much people have been embracing it as like as the new kind of beginning of the series. And I think the most exciting thing about it is like obviously Viv and Brandon started this thing together. They did the first season together,
Mm-hmm.
but it's exploded so much since then into this huge collaborative process among the me and the rest of the writers room. So many more animators, so many more directors and stuff. Having the new start point be that same kind of huge collaborative like village made project,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the scrappy like two creators kind of making it from nothing thing.
Right.
It felt like a good touchstone to show where we are now versus where we were then, and to kind of like walk forward into this new era of Helluva that's going to live on Amazon, on kind of our best foot forward
Yeah.
as like a family, as a studio. So yeah, it was really cool.
I think you all did a really good job at like, because like what a pilot does, like if it's going to be a new version of it or whatever, and especially coming on a new platform like Amazon, where it's not just here's the introduction to what will eventually just be, oh, here comes the first season. This is coming on like, oh, here's all of this that you could just dive right into. You don't always have that with a pilot. No, initially when it started off, you did. You got this is our idea or proof of concept, and then sometimes what the show itself is reflective of that, or sometimes when the show gets made, things change. Having the show ahead of the pilot this time around with that in mind, it works very differently, but like in a way that because season 1 and 2, there's very different evolutions of the characters and whatnot. I feel like the pilot, this new one, um, really does a good job as an advertisement of the show as a whole, because I do feel like it had a lot of elements of, like you said, going back and kind of touching on these character dynamics you kind of missed out on originally, kind of getting to re-explore some of those, like the Millie's relationship with Luna or lack thereof with certain word choices and whatnot. And then obviously, like you mentioned too, with Moxie and Blitz, or the change in direct dynamic between Stolas arriving at the office, you got things like that. But like, I felt like there's also a little bit of like this, maybe like this more hopeful crack in the armor when you're going into that too, because I feel like compared, like if you're going right into season 1, Blitz is very much like the shells are up. But I think we got to see in the pilot, and I think some people were a little uh maybe a little jarred by that. I've just seen like a couple of comments about it. It's just like, oh, it seemed a little softer here in this moment than what I would have thought of season 1 Blitz or something like that.
Right.
But like when at least in my rationale, is like this is an advertisement for the show as a whole, and it's a little bit of an insight for somebody just coming in that, oh, in case you're missing out on all these subtleties, here's a little bit of an idea of what this character is actually feeling like, looking like, how this relationship's going to be established. And I think that balanced out really, really nicely. And yeah, like using the assassination as a framing device to introduce the characters' differing personalities, and most notably Moxie not wanting to kill kids.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I think you guys nailed it with that.
Yeah, it was an interesting like you ever see the like the you do the like the test tube, right? And the different colored liquids that kind of separate and layer, and it's like, oh, you have this much action, this much heart, this much comedy, this much whatever, hijinks and whatnot. And when you look at like series wide, it has a certain distribution, and it was definitely like something we wanted to do to make that episode, that pilot, and reflect that equal kind of distribution of those things. Have some action, have a mission, have some heart, have some clear emotional stuff that's happening. But also, but then also roll it back and still, like I said, and reintroduce the characters. Make sure that somebody seeing this for the very, very, very first time is walking into this with like equipped with everything they need to know moving into episode 1.
Exactly.
Because I guess another thing that happens a lot in both Hazbin and Helluva, is that the fan base has their own, like, these have been so successful that the fan base takes on a life of their own, and they do almost some of the work for you of like developing these characters out, where they're like living beings in this fandom space. And so there's a perceived understanding of the characters moving in, from episode to episode, that the fans have done kind of for themselves. And we can't assume any of that,
Right.
with this new pilot. We assume that any new viewers are going to be basically binging this thing.
Right.
So we need to make sure that, like, yeah, we're setting them up for success with that they aren't going to be, in this internet space with all these longtime fans that are going to kind of inform them of things in the subtext or whatever. We got
Hmm.
to make sure it's like it's there, and people are ready for it.
Yeah, no, I totally get you on that one. I think it does, like I said, I think it does a really good job at like giving somebody who's never seen this before at least all of the tools that they need to kind of see where this goes, because it establishes the dynamics, the relationships, the the messy balance between Stolas and Blitz, especially how it starts, and but it also gives you those breadcrumbs of what could happen with that in a really nice way, um, and just the overall tone. I think you guys landed
Mhm.
that pretty solid. Um, Finally, though, you're talking about Amazon, the new platform, and all that, and
Yeah,
your production side of things. Let's kind of take it back into those dark
sure.
recesses. What's that been like, and what exactly on the production side of it are your responsibilities?
Yeah, I mean, so I've kind of moved up in production, yeah, over time. I started out basically just as a production coordinator, like helping send out approvals for animation reviews and cleanup reviews and design reviews and all these different things. Um, I you know helped track the day to day. I took screenshots and delivered red lines and all kinds of just basically kind of like uh, mundane, like the stuff that was dragging down the leads and taking away from their time. I was one of the only prod people at the time, like that way early on,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was just that kind of catch all, anything that needed to be done that a lead shouldn't really have to spend their time on, so they can go back to doing what they do best, drawing and
Right.
and leading the team. That was on me, and then as I moved up, I became, as production manager, I was more in charge of like kind of day-to-day operations of the studio, making sure that I was in charge of developing and enforcing the schedule and deliveries and dailies and all this different stuff. As I've now moved up to head of production, I'm overseeing more of the prod structure under me,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm involved in a lot more. I'm in the pre-production stuff. I'm in with the voice acting and scripts and getting animatics developed and reviewed and noted. I'm in the post-production side with getting stuff checked with QC and credits and music and score, and I'm handling all the mix stuff now for that, which is really exciting. And then honestly, the biggest thing is just kind of helping manage the interdepartmental communication and help facilitate that cooperation. Because, like, it's really easy to be on an island in each of these individual departments where you're just kind of focused on your thing and like how it affects your department.
Right.
And it helps to have somebody over the whole thing, kind of keeping an eye on how all of these pieces flow and fit together. Especially as certain departments speed up, certain departments slow down, because they run into trouble or whatever, and managing the flow, the workflow, um, through all these challenges and stuff, and making sure that they kind of adhere to the production schedule, and we're always trying to keep our artists working, keep them fed, as we say, so that nobody's sitting on their hands or not uh you know having that momentum to move forward. Nobody likes that. And then um it's I'm speaking in some certain vagaries, but like it's just it is in some ways it's a hard to pin down kind of job, because it's
Right.
just
It's a little bit
this
of
help, like,
everything.
yeah, the way I always described it is I'm not a cog in the machine. I'm like the oil that helps lubricate it and just keep it moving smoothly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, everybody, we have a lot of hardworking, amazing, both leads and artists and I'm just there to try to make sure that that work is being utilized as efficiently as possible. If somebody finishes something early, I got to make sure it gets to the next person equally early or whatever,
Right.
or else that extra effort has gone to waste because now it's
Exactly.
whatever. So that's kind of the main thrust of the job, is just make sure that the work that's being done is utilized properly and is put to good use. Yeah,
And
pretty
you've
much
been
it.
around since, the early days and now into this new era with
Yeah.
Amazon entering the picture. Has that changed anything behind the scenes, as maybe red tape or just oversight, or how's that impacted the actual, or if at all, the creation of the show?
Our day to day hasn't changed much, really at all, actually. I'd say the main thing that changed is just for the better is we have a little more freedom now because of our release structure.
Mm-hmm.
How it was happening before, we were releasing episodes as we were finishing them. There were times that we literally were getting the last fixed shot into place hours before we upload to YouTube. Um, Now, because we're not releasing episodically anymore, we have the freedom in our production order to change things around, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's given us a lot of flexibility in how we approach problems. Instead of getting hung up on, let's say there's a certain sequence of shots that are incredibly difficult, or let's say like a song isn't really working and we keep having to send it back, so we can't move this episode forward because the song isn't ready yet or something like that. um it allows us to just shift our priorities and move on. We shifted the production of like which episodes
Right.
come, all in all kinds of ways, right? Because we have the freedom to do that, because they're not due one after the other, they're due all at the same time.
Right.
So as long as you're moving forward, it's it's work not wasted, you know what I mean? Back when we were releasing episodically, if something held up an episode, the episode's just held up. Like, our whole production gets held up because you have to finish each episode in order as it comes.
Right.
So that it's given us a lot of freedom. It's made my job a little more difficult. There's a little bit of air traffic controller,
Right.
happening. Okay, so we have a hang up here. So we're going to delay that. We're going to move this episode down. We're going to send this to design. We're going to send this one to animation. We're going to send 10 minutes of this over to cleanup, and then hit pause on that until 15 minutes of this episode comes through. You know what I mean? Like, there's a little bit
Right.
more of that, but it's ultimately a very good thing, because it means that we're not going to hit these massive speed bumps like we have in the past. If one department is just really struggling or something like that with one episode, we
Mm-hmm.
still get to utilize everybody else around them to get some kind of work done, and make sure that we're all moving forward.
There's no
So it's great.
lulls at all.
Yeah.
So it keeps the momentum going. So yeah, I can see how that's not something I considered about the change in the release schedule, but yeah, that keeps the machine moving, like you said, in that way. And I'm still very interested to see how that's going to go once we get to that point, and just in general,
Mhm.
because I most notably, I think, in the ecosystem, I think, is what I'm really interested in. Once everything starts to kind of flow out, or at least we have like an idea of how things are going to be parsed out, because there's very much so quite the culture that's grown around that kind of chaotic release schedule, you know, that
Yeah.
both works for and against it at times, because that's a lot of time for people to build up their own expectations, because like you said, like, you can't really control the life of this thing once it's out in the wild.
Yeah.
And when people sit on it for a long time, they come up with their speculations. It gets rooted, and sometimes that expectation clashes with what actually ends up happening. And because that's one thing like I noticed about it too, and I talked to Viv about this, was that once it was like kind of all out, because like, that was the intent, like it was written to be
Right.
consumed like all in
As a
one
whole
go.
thing. Yes.
And watching it all in just like a binge, like it flows, I think, pretty wonderfully for some of you, especially who grew up in the 90s and stuff like that with sitcoms and stuff like that. It's just like, that's just kind of like the pacing, the structure that I'm kind
Hmm.
of very used to. And I think that's kind of something that's been a little, I think it's harder to get hung up, or easier to get hung up on, when you've got like those big gaps. sometimes.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what the future of this is going to look like too. And yeah, it's nice to hear that like they're not like coming down or anything like that, or there's, because I know like if I remember right, Viv said like a lot of the deal was like Control still stays with the team as far as like what happens, all that. It's just like, here, go play, just host it over here. So
yeah,
it's good. Like, I've talked to a lot of people that have kind of, especially in animation, because like between like Invincible, between Legend of Vox Machina, and now like you guys over there with Hazbin Hotel, man, like they're really kind of diving into that animation pool and just letting the creators play. You know, I've talked, you know, with the Critical Role guys over there about that transition too, whether it be Travis or Matt, and you know, that seems like Amazon, as far as like their studio side's been very, very good to work with. And I don't know, it's just, you don't, the way I've seen them operate with their creatives is not something I've seen with really many other studios.
Yeah, you know, I don't have like a plethora of experience in the studio system, so I can't really like speak to how comparatively good they are. But like, I'm very pleasantly surprised. I think when you're on the outside looking in, you have this idea. You hear so many horror stories.
Right.
You have this idea of like the big bad studio coming to like stomp all over your creativity, and it just hasn't been that at all. You know, we're doing our thing. We're making our show the way we want to make it, and Amazon's been awesome in facilitating that. You know. So
especially coming from,
I really
like,
have no complaints.
Yeah, you guys came from like a completely like self-owned thing too. Like this was like your project, your overhead, your group. So this is really just like the first time you guys are really kind of bumping into that too. And honestly, you're not really bumping. It seems like they're just like, keep doing your thing. And
cruising,
as far as that goes, that's for anybody, I think, from like you said, with the outsiders looking in, like with that, you know, because just like with you, I think most other people probably have no idea what that looks like, but you always hear about the horror stories. And for that to at least seemingly not be the case, I think that hopefully will give a lot of peace of mind for anybody who might have been concerned about, you know, Hazbin being its own thing, because that was already an established thing, but the move from Helluva Boss from being this independent project that still got to live on its own, hope is kind of protected from any of that, those fears at least. And I like hearing that. It's really promising and encouraging. Because honestly, like, as far as like, I don't know about how they run their warehouses and all that kind of stuff, but like but like as far as like whoever is presiding over Amazon Studios, the people behind their shows, their projects, like film and TV, I've heard nothing but great things from the people that have worked with them, which is wild. But
I know, right? It flies against the expectation I think people have, which is just surprised. Like, but it's I'm like, you know, I wish I had more to say on it, but it's like it's great. we're doing good. We're doing our thing. We do what we want to do. We're making changes when we want to make changes, and we're keeping things the same when we want to keep them the same. And you know, there's really no static. You know, it's just smooth sailing.
I think that's kind of all I got for the most part, as far as the things I wanted to kind of talk about or pick your brain about. Do you have anything you wanted to kind of sound off yourself? Any final thoughts for us, the audience, or whoever?
I'm trying to think. I think we covered pretty much everything. I mean, quick shout out to just some of the people that you know don't get a lot of recognition. You know, we have so I talked about Mel and Tony, a couple of our directors. Amanda Hurd is also our wonderful art director. She is incredible. She controls all of the the background elements. I think some people don't really think about this, but like every single item, every single everything in an episode needs to be designed and thought about, even as simple as just, you know, whatever, this little fork or whatever, for consistency between shots. And so it's I think it's a very thankless job to have to watch over the silverware for an episode or whatever. But Amanda does it great, and she always makes sure that everything is dripping with character for the show. You know, nothing is just a thing. You know, very, very, very few times will a mug just be a mug, or a fork will just be a fork. They all have some little amount of characters. You know, yeah, exactly. And it just adds such an extra element of care and attention and intentionality to the show. So yeah, Amanda, you're wonderful. We have Alexis, our design lead, also helps with that, and um, we have Savannah, our background lead. Um, and then cleanup, I think I think a lot of people don't think a lot about cleanup, but at least what our version of cleanup is line and paint. It's selecting the final lines out of the rough animation as well as doing the color. Sammy and Miss Fanica are our two leads there. They're wonderful, and their reviews. It's so even within animation, cleanup is often seen as kind of I think there's like a tier list of just where the prestige comes from, and cleanup's not that high on the list. But these guys are some of the hardest working people in animation. Their reviews sessions, because they have to pay such attention. It's the final line and the final colors. You have to pay such close attention to detail. Their reviews take 3 to 4 times longer than any other department's reviews, because they just have to get into the nitty gritty and the minutia of every single shot. And they're not talked about or thanked enough for that. So thanks to you two. And then effects. A lot of people also don't know this, but like explosions, flames, smoke, all these things that are like water, elemental kind of amorphous things. There's a whole department dedicated to that stuff, and we have a lot of explosions in this show. And Caro is our effects lead, and she's wonderful, and the people on her team are incredibly talented, and they have a very specialized skill that not everybody is exceptional at in the animation world. And then last but not least, we have our compositing team, who do all the lighting effects and stuff. And they, I think, more than any other show, Helluva is really heavy on our comp. We do a lot of lighting effects, a lot of gradients, a lot of specialized stuff with our color and atmosphere. And these guys are just a cut above everyone else that I've ever seen. So Mike and Colton, you guys are superstars. Oh, and the mono, of course. I'm sorry, or render lead. She helps the transition between cleanup and comp, making sure all the files are ready and to be assembled in the comp stage. And her render team is also very diligent, very hardworking. So these are our leads. They don't get nearly enough recognition. So thank you guys so much for all your hard work, and thanks for making such an amazing and magical show. I'm just thankful to be a part of. And thank you to you, Omni Media. No, honestly, your channel's amazing. You reactors and video essayists and the people that really engage with the content outside of its release day, they give a whole second life to the show and are instrumental in making it the success that it is, and instrumental in allowing us to continue to pursue our dreams. I mean, this studio and this show is something that's really special. It's something I like I said, I could see how special it was from day one, seeing a half finished animatic, and I am thankful every day that I get to be a part of it. And I know so many other people are thankful too. And the only reason we're able to is because of people like you and the fans out there that are watching and supporting and buying merch and coming to see us at cons. And like we literally could not do it. We would all be working at McDonald's or something if it wasn't for you guys. So thank you so much. And thank you for giving us a chance to spotlight all of this and all of these important people's hard work. Appreciate it.
No, I thank you for being here and like giving me this opportunity, because it's something we talked about before that I really wanted to do as well. Because like, not to like lessen anything, but like obviously this is Viv's creation and all that, and then you got the voice actors or whatever. But there's like so many people that work on this that I think kind of just don't get enough attention. And this is a conversation like we've started here with that whole thing, to shine a little light on that. And just thank you for cutting out this time to spread the love, to talk about the show, your involvement, and hopefully we can have some more conversations about it going forward as well. But I just, again, thank you for taking that time, your kind words about the channel itself and all of that as well. And just thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me. Take care.